Transgender identity isn't a new idea. People have been rebelling against their assigned gender roles for as long as they have existed. What is new is the recent increase of transgender visibility and the growing movement for trans rights and dignity. But how does a person know when they are making the transition? What is the impact on their lives? How can people who are non-trans or cisgender better understand and respect those who are? Today, we will meet Chris, who was assigned a female at birth and transitioned to male. We will talk one-on-one about his life leading up to the time he transitioned, what the gender transition is, and how his life has changed afterwards. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back.
God makes a way.
Be honest and communicate.
Your authentic self.
That's so critical. Counselor and advisor at Delaware County Community College for 7 years. He is an out transgender faculty member dedicating his time to higher education environment, sympathetic and welcoming to trans students and employees. At the age of 4, Chris Dungee first expressed the desire to be a boy. It wasn't until 12 years later that he would revisit the idea of transitioning, and even then he couldn't imagine it ever being possible. He found his inspiration in his students and fully transitioned in 2014. Transgender media figures such as Caitlyn Jenner, Janet Mock, and Jazz Jennings played a pivotal role in giving Chris the courage to be the man he always knew himself to be. He has presented at the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference and provided local colleges and school districts training in accommodating and supporting transgender students and faculty. Thank you so much today for joining us. This is probably a show that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, so I really appreciate you coming in and joining us today. So I think the first thing we should do, we talked about, is let's identify what it means to be transgender.
Sure. Well, first thing is you have to understand that there's a difference between sex and gender. That's where you have to start. So the simplest form that I could say it is when we're born, you come out of your mom and the doctor looks between your legs and decides what physical sex you are. That's what goes on your birth certificate. There are other things that define physical sex, but that's the easiest way to do it. Typically, most cultures align a gender identity to a physical sex. So if you're male, you identify as a man. If you're female, you identify as a woman. If those things align for you, you are what's called cisgender, cis meaning the same. If you are transgender, meaning the opposite, it gets a little crisscrossed, right? So therefore, I was born physically female, but I identify as a man. So that's probably the easiest way to go about explaining it.
Well, thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
And honestly, I never even heard the term cisgender until I started doing research on this show.
Yes. It's typically a term that if you are cisgender, oddly enough, you probably never heard it before. It's mainly used in community more than anything.
So you're 4 years old. Mm-hmm. 4 years old, which I find like 4 years old, and you say to your sister, what?
I believe the story goes as I was playing with some toys, and I said to my sister, "I'm a boy." Just as matter-of-factly as it could be. I don't think it was in the context of any larger conversation. Just something that I needed to state.
You just looked up to her and said, I'm a boy.
And ever since I can remember, something always felt off. Something felt not right. And when you go through adolescence, I mean, it's tough for all of us, right? But there was always sort of this something hanging over my head that I couldn't define, that I couldn't put a finger on. What exactly makes me different? All the other kids around me seemed to be figuring it out, and I couldn't. And so I was 4 when I first verbalized it. It didn't go anywhere.
Right. You're 4, you know.
Yeah.
If you know, as a parent or a sibling, you're like, okay, what, you know,
right.
We're going to dismiss that for now,
right?
What was her reaction when you said that? Do you remember?
Well, my sister is about 10.5 years older than me. She's always been another parent in that aspect. So knowing her, I'm sure she just rolled with the punches, you know.
Right.
So I mean, I was always a tomboy, you know. And when it came to school and recreational activities, my interests, a lot of them were what we would traditionally associate to a little boy. And for some people, that's as far as it goes, right? There may be some young women out there who are masculine in appearance and manner and tend to like more masculine things, and that it never goes any further than that. But for some of us, another step needs to be taken to alter our gender identity.
So you're for, just try to paint a picture, I guess, if you can, because you know we're telling a story, but I want to try to help the viewers understand that, you know, this is this is who you are.
Right.
It's not, you didn't make this up one day.
Right. I didn't wake up on a Saturday morning, you know, after snack time and just say, hey, I think I'm going to be a boy today, you know.
And I do think that's, I think unfortunately a lot
That's
of
the
people,
perception, yeah.
that is the perception. The perception is that you woke up one day and you said, oh, I want to be a boy today. And people tend to dismiss it, and it's hurtful.
And my response to that is always, well, why? Why would someone possibly do that? It's something that comes from deeper within. It's something that science hasn't completely explained. But what makes you know that you're cisgender, right? It's just who you are. It's who you naturally know yourself to be. So,
I think we take it for granted for people who tell us what we are or who we are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So you told me about a period of time in your life when you were really lonely, that no matter where you were going, you did not feel that you were fitting in some capacity, right?
Right.
So now that you have transitioned, and we'll talk about that, but now that you have transitioned, do you feel better about yourself?
Yes.
Are you happier?
Yes. It's a feeling where you feel part of the world around you. I always felt super disconnected before, had no idea why. So to, you know, kind of come back to the story of being four, it wasn't until I was 16 that I revisited trans identity again. For whatever reason at the time, I had a subscription to 17 magazine. No idea why. But there was an article in there about a young trans male in the Philadelphia area, and I immediately found myself in that article, and I like ran to my mom and showed it to her, and she was all about it. You know, let me know what we have to do to get this going. But it was a different world when I was 16. You know, we're talking about 98. I'm not that old, but you know, it was a different world. So, but that was sort of the beginning of my feeling disconnected from the world around me, for sure.
That was the beginning of the end, though, right? Because you saw this magazine article. I
saw some hope.
You saw hope,
right?
Right. So you saw the hope. You went to your mom, which kudos to your mom, because your mom and your sister, right?
Yeah,
They've just
I got lucky.
You really did. You really got lucky. They really embraced who you are.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing. That, you know, that doesn't happen for a lot of people, right?
Exactly.
So you go to your mom and she says, tell me what we have to do.
Right.
And what do you do?
I thought about it. There wasn't much of an internet then, quite as much as there is now. So there really wasn't anywhere for me to go. And honestly, it ended there at that time. I mean, I was in high school. I had a lot of other things going on that everybody deals with. So,
can I ask you a question? When you were in high school, did you find it difficult to build relationships and make friends?
I did,
because of, you know, you really was feeling in your heart of heart that you were a man,
right?
But you physically at that point looked like a female,
right?
Correct.
And I was expected. It's one thing to know who you are inside, but how society views you is huge, right? So, I struggled with some really bad social anxiety through high school and college at my time here at Temple University. And in hindsight, I know for a fact, but it was because I was transgender and didn't know it or quite understand it at the time.
So now you're in high school and you just are done. You're a female, but are you?
The best I could do was lesbian, right?
Okay.
Like that was the only thing I had.
Okay.
So you know, I went with that for a while. I was always very masculine in my gender expression, and that suited. It was good for the time.
For the people who are watching, just, you know, let's just be really clear, because
Sure.
you say, well, I was really masculine for me. Like, what does that mean? Like,
so gender expression, another definition I could throw out there. Sort of, it's anything from your outward appearance, how you dress, the gait in your walk, the inflection in your voice, how you choose to wear your hair, or jewelry that you adorn or not. We all have a gender expression. It's kind of on a spectrum of feminine to masculine and everything in between, androgynous. So my expression was always very masculine, especially when I finished high school and got to college and could be more of who I am.
So you came to Temple and you are now trying to come to terms with, I mean, college is an exciting time, right?
Yes.
College is the opportunity to really find yourself. So now you're here on college campus, on Temple's campus, and you're saying, I know I'm a
Something's
man.
going
Something's
on.
going
Right.
on. I
Right.
know I'm a man, right?
Right.
So, and I think the story you told, which I want to share later
Sure.
about coming back on campus, was a great story.
Sure.
But so you say, I know I'm a man. What propelled you to really dive in and do the transition?
So I hit college. It was rough for me socially. Again, that social anxiety.
Yeah, so it's really, that's why it was so important for us to do this show, because the social anxiety that has to come about,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and it leads to such loneliness, and so I really wanted to do the show, and I can't thank you for anyone that's watching that may feel that struggle,
Yeah.
that anxiety.
Definitely not alone with that. It makes you retreat into yourself. At a time in college where you should be discovering yourself and engaging with your peers, engaging with the world around you, I wasn't able to do that.
Right.
So it's almost like a large chunk of my life was lost to that. And it took me a while, even after college, to come around to admitting the fact that I'm trans.
That's so fascinating that you said that a large part of my life was lost.
Yes, very large part.
So we're going to continue our conversation about being transgender when we come right back.
Do you ever feel like you know what you want to do once you graduate from Temple, but just can't figure out how to get the job for which you've studied so hard? Well, there is a place to which Klein College students and recent alum can turn to for support and resources that can power the first job search. It's called the Klein College Career Center. I'm Hannah McCumsey, and I know you can find help at the center because I work there. Here are just some of the resources available to you. There's an internship and job database exclusively for Klein students and alumni to help find jobs in media and communication. There are also one-on-one counseling sessions available with the Director of Career Services, in addition to small group resume and cover letter workshops. The Internship and Career Fair places potential employers in the same room as students who are looking for opportunities in media and communication. Klein students also have the opportunity to meet with employers and companies in a small group setting throughout the year. These information sessions are a great networking opportunity and a chance to learn from a professional in the field. All of these opportunities and more await you. Just contact the Klein College Career Center online at klein.temple.edu/career-center or check us out on social media.
Hello, I'm TUTV's Melissa Steininger with a question of sustainability. Did you know that pedal power can fuel a cleaner, greener Philadelphia? Bicycling is fast, healthy, affordable, and environmentally friendly. It's also the perfect way to get around town. Here are some bike safety tips. Stop at all stop signs and red lights. Ride with, not against traffic. And remember, no riding on the sidewalk. It's actually illegal in the city if you're over 12 years old. Finally, don't be afraid to use the full lane. It's perfectly legal and it'll make you more visible to motorists. Visit bike.temple.edu for more information. Please join with Temple's Office of Sustainability and TUTV to help make Temple cherry, white, and green.
Welcome back. We're talking about being transgender today with Chris. And so we were talking about how you knew you were a man and you felt that you had lost a large part of your life not really having that opportunity to transition.
Yes.
Okay. So now you're on college campus and you've decided it's time to transition.
I decided it was time to start thinking about it, but again, we're talking about a different world. You know, a lot of the trans figures that are in the media now didn't exist yet, so I had no role model. I didn't know anyone who was trans. I didn't know anyone who knew what trans was. So I was still in the mindset that to be a masculine lesbian was the best option that I had. So, and that is why I say, you know, a large chunk of my life was kind of taken away in terms of my ability to blossom and to bloom as a human being, because I didn't know where to go or what to do.
So how did you have, you know, I've been doing these shows for, this is the 4th season, and I always ask people, like, how did you have the bandwidth or the gumption or the, to keep moving forward? Because I think that It's scary. It's scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
We all have things that we are scared about. We talked about this earlier. And where did you do to push forward?
Well, it took some time. It took a lot of therapy. It took.
There goes that word again.
There goes.
That I love that word.
As a counselor, I'm going to tout the therapy, right? Got to keep myself in business too.
No, I think it's funny you say that, because I have suggested to people in the past, have you thought about getting some therapy? And people say, I don't need therapy.
We all do.
We all do.
I've never met a person that doesn't.
We all do. Thank you. So everybody, call your therapist.
Yes, run quick, right? So it took a lot of therapy. It took a lot of maturing, to be honest. It took a lot of hitting rock bottom and digging my way out of that. But it took the right, it's a mix that you need, of environment, friends, family. So I started working at Delaware County Community College, and I got into the position that I'm in now. And one of my roles, long-time roles, was as the faculty advisor for our Gay Straight Alliance. And I got to meet a lot of students going through a lot of different things. And I was able to meet a lot of young trans students, and I just marveled at their ability to be so young and be so confident in who they were. And that's what propelled me to say, I'm 30 years old, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. I confided in a good friend of mine, and about a year went by, and then finally about 3.5 years ago, I was able to do it. I just said, it's now or never. I'm at a good place in my life, and I'm going to make the transition.
So let's talk about transition,
sure,
if you don't mind. Let's explain to our guests, our audience, what transition means.
So to transition, I want to stress that it means different things to different people. I don't think there's one good way of defining it. But it's basically going about the process to live your life as the gender that you identify, not necessarily the one that you were, or the sex and the gender identity that you were assigned at birth. There are a lot of different things that go into that. For most people, I feel comfortable saying that, some sort of hormone therapy is involved. So it's administering the hormone that you weren't born with, right? Which starts to change your body. For some people, it might involve various surgeries, but they're expensive, and a lot of health insurance doesn't cover it, even though it's getting a lot better. So I want to stress that to define someone as being transgender, you don't want to put an emphasis on the surgery. But for a lot of people, it definitely is changing your name legally, being out to family, friends, coworkers, and being able to just slowly live your life as the gender that you identify with.
So let me just make sure I understand
Sure.
this correctly. So you're saying it's basically what works for that individual
Exactly.
person. So
Right.
there's no perfect, okay,
Right.
so here's how you transition, and there's no perfect
There's no book for it,
There's
right?
no book for
what
it,
worked for
okay.
me may not work for someone else.
Okay. I never asked you this question.
Sure.
Were you born with the name Chris or Christine?
It was Crystal, so I didn't have to
okay.
make a big jump. Some people have to kind of figure it out, but it was easy for me.
So you were Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
How did you how did you tell your larger family? I understand that your mom and your
Right.
sister were really welcoming and loving. How was, how did you say?
I was
well,
strategic. I told my
okay.
mom and sister and said, go, have at it. Tell everybody you want. So, that,
you made mom do all the
basically is what that boils down to, right? So, call aunts, call cousins, call uncles, let everybody know. So that's how I did it when it comes to family.
Do you have any sense of what the reaction was, the initial reaction was?
My family is very accepting, so I haven't had any issues there. I am one of the lucky ones.
You are so lucky.
Yeah, unfortunately, the story for many trans people is not so good. I mean, you're going to see a lot of people who aren't accepted, but I didn't have that problem with family, with friends, with my job. It has been great. The institution that I work for, Delaware County Community College, very welcoming. So I didn't have any issues at all. Went off without a hitch.
Do you mind sharing that you have had a few of the surgeries?
Yeah.
So you have started the transition.
I have.
But you are not completely done
exactly.
with the transition.
I mean, I wanted to have accomplished that this past summer, but I was unfortunately diagnosed with kidney cancer at the last minute, so I have to wait for a while. But it's the good thing about it is that the health insurance companies are stepping up and are covering it, because without that, I would never be able to achieve that dream.
So let's talk about, and I'm sorry to hear about your cancer. So
I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That makes me
I'm
feel
all
much
right.
better. If you're okay,
Yeah.
I'm good. So what are some of the hardships that you think that people who don't have the what's the word, the people that love them and care about them,
Right.
and the, some people say you're crazy.
Yeah, right.
Right. So what are some of the hardships they face, and how can they go out and get help if they need it?
It's hard to be confident when you're alone. You know, we all, as human beings, we need to be connected. We need to be supported, and to have the people that you love and trust the most not accept you is devastating. The impact that can have on your self-esteem, on your ability to transition and have a happy transition, it speaks volumes to that. But for anyone who is in need or who needs to reach out, whatever city or location that you're in, find your local LGBTQ community center. I know if you're in like a sort of a remote part of the country or a remote part of the state, that might be harder to do. But even if you have to find one and pick up a phone and call, there are plenty of centers that have hotlines where you can talk to someone, get involved, volunteer. If there's a Pride Festival, go to that. Sometimes we can't choose our family, right? So you have to make family in other ways. And I hate to say it, but you know, if mom or dad or legal guardian isn't there for you, find someone else. There are plenty of us in the community that will step up to be family for you.
Well, speaking of community, why don't you share the story you told me this morning about coming back on campus, and how you got here a little early this morning. You tell the story.
Yeah. I got here early to find parking because I did remember that that's always a problem. But I'm driving around, and it was the first time I've been sort of in the center of campus in 12 years now. It looked a lot different when I was here.
A lot of construction.
A lot of construction, a lot of buildings that weren't here. But it was interesting because I remember walking around this campus and just feeling disconnected and lost, just kind of walking around like a zombie, really. And now coming back, I'm so confident in myself, and my career has moved forward, all because I've been able to transition. So to be here as the person that I am now, you know, I wish I could reach back in time and tell me from then, you know, you're going to be fine. So that was a powerful moment for sure.
I just got the chills.
Oh.
That was so awesome, because you just told people who are watching the show that if you're walking around like a zombie, and you know what, honestly, Chris, it doesn't even need to be walking like a zombie dealing with your sexuality.
It could be anything.
It could be anything.
Literally anything.
Literally, I think there's a lot of people in today's world walking around like zombies and need some help and reach out, and help is always there.
Especially college students.
So, you know, do you think that society is ever going to accept the transgender community? I mean,
Does
we talked about
really
this a little.
Ever accept anyone that's different from the norm? To an extent, yes. It's getting better. I mean, I could say in the past 5 years alone, leaps and bounds, the acceptance has been better. The larger national conversations we have about sort of bathroom access or things like that, it sounds to someone who's listening to it, who is supportive of the community. I know it's hard to listen to some of those conversations, but they're important because it propels everything forward.
And it's really hard when you hear people that say things like, well, why do we need to have those bathrooms?
Right.
Or then the pronoun, those conversations.
Right.
And it seems like, I agree with you. I think it's better than where it was, but we still have an awful long way.
We do.
To go, right?
I feel good about trans people who are living in major cities or near major cities, you know. But if you're in certain parts of the country, are you going to find the same resources and have the same ability to have health coverage through your transition? Maybe not. So there's always a long way to go, but it's moving at a rapid pace, and that's good. That's excellent.
So it's interesting because you started out as a counselor at Delaware Community College, and it's actually the students that help give you the strength and the courage to transition, or to help you embrace who you were. What would you say to any student today that is walking on campus a little confused? Like, how do you, suppose someone's watching this right now and they're like, I think I'm a transgender, but I'm not really sure. How do you get to the place where you know, or do you not? Like,
it's the self-discovery phase is important, and it's tough, and you have to do a lot of soul searching. So to someone who is out there and they know who they are, but they just can't do it for whatever reason, the biggest advice that I could give to them is that however you have to do it, whatever you have to do, take that first step of going to your local health provider and just having the conversation.
That is excellent way to end the show. So my thanks very much to our guest for sharing his very personal story. Figuring out ourselves is a lifelong process, and for some of us that involves a process that's a battle between our inner selves and societal norms that doesn't seem to be designed to accommodate us. A hard question is gender. People have to ask ourselves is why we have such a hard time accommodating people who pose absolutely no threat to us. Much of the panic and the fear that society has about trans individuals is easily proven to be baseless, but that fear persists nonetheless. For trans individuals to bounce back into living the lives that are the truest selves. The rest of us need to be able to work on our own capacities for respect and acceptance. And that begins by understanding that other people have much right and dignity and self-respect and self-definition as you do. Once again, I'm Lisa Bien, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Bouncing Back. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back.
God makes a way.
Be honest and communicate.
Be your authentic self.
That's so critical.